Greetings, greetings. Welcome to Humanity versus the New World Order. Today's episode is a very special episode. We're going to be discussing a little bit about the New World Order and, their plans on population control. We're going to be showing some very important information that everyone should know when researching this evil cabal of wicked globalists. How they are attacking the family, how they're destroying humanity, and we're going to just really expose the war against human freedom and, the satanic onslaught that's goal is nothing less than total enslavement. We're going to show you some things you've probably never seen before, and we're going to learn a lot today, and we're going to learn from God's Word too. So I hope you got your King James Bibles, I hope you got a pencil, and I hope you're ready to click some links because we're about to learn. Okay, so first I'm going to get started. I'm going to explain a little bit why we're doing this. Because most Americans, sadly, are blissfully unaware that a secret war is being waged without their own knowledge. Americans have fallen victim to a ruthless cabal of psychopaths who view them as mere lab rats and cattle for experimentation and slaughter. America has been taken over by a technocratic elite who view themselves as a new class of gods, and they want to erase every individual difference from ethnicity to thought. Their goal is the creation of a world without borders and the installment of a new world order. Nations in Africa, the Middle East, Eastern and Central Europe, and all over Asia have suffered at the hands of this globalist new world order, and now they've set their targets for America and the West. It is time for those in America and in the Western European countries and Northern European countries to awaken to this psychopathic blueprint that has already attacked and angered much of the world and used the West as a base for its imperialistic plots. The psychopathic blueprint created by this multinational elite and their goals for world domination. This elite has figured out that to do this, to gain total control of the world, that they have to lower the population. They've been targeting people through war and biological weapons and all sorts of evil degeneracy and all kinds of, just evil stuff that they're doing to people to lower the population. This is the story of how these wicked men intend to do this and how they have been doing it for the past few years. Growing up, I could never understand why some people would want to destroy what God has created. Yet I knew the answer the whole time. I would stay up at night trying to figure out why some people would want to destroy such beauty that we see. Things that God instituted, the family. Why would people not want to see life prosper? Why would people want to destroy the family? Why would people want to destroy the connection between child and parent and brother and sister? Why would people just want to do this wicked, evil stuff? Why would they want to institutionalize everything and put everyone in the public education system to brainwash them and corrupt them and to take people from their natural roots and enslave them, you know? And I then realized that the Bible provided answers for this the whole time. It was right in my Bible. The following scriptures, Proverbs 8:36, but he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. Not now, it should tell you that, there's a lot of people that don't know our Lord. And I know probably not everyone who watches this channel is a Christian, but I'm not saying that, everyone who doesn't know our Lord hates the Lord. Exceptionally it. A lot of people don't know the Lord, or you know, they want to know the Lord, or they want to discover the Lord, or they don't know anything about the Lord, or they don't believe in the Lord. But it takes a lot for someone to actually hate the Lord. So, who are these people that hate the Lord? Well, people that love death. People who hate the Lord are generally, they have something against the Lord, or they have something, against his sovereignty or against his love. And, the Lord says that they love death. God clearly says that those who hate him love death. These people who do these evil things, in turn, are merely worshiping the spirit behind their wicked ideas. In Romans chapter 1, God says some men are given over to a reprobate mind. I am paraphrasing here, but that's basically what it says. Jesus told the Pharisees, corrupt and self-righteous religious leaders of his time, in John 8:44, "Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it." Without a belief in the creator of the Bible, the West has lost its moral integrity. The West is no longer based on any form of objective moral truth. Did you know that that long ago America's number one law dictionary was Black's Law Dictionary, and it was based on the Bible until it was replaced by a new dictionary that suited modernity? Did you know that the reason every American child knows how to read and is required to read was because of a law, so kids would know the word of God, so they could, not be tricked by that old serpent? Although sadly, children's knowledge of reading is declining, and there's a lot of sad stuff going on, and people are less educated. You have people that don't know where Texas is on a map. I mean, really, people. But lawmakers back in the day wanted children to have knowledge of the Bible and God, but now our lawmakers are all sickos. America has replaced God with Darwin. It has become a slave state based on total mind control and mass media manipulation. Ideas of B.F. Skinner and Sigmund Freud have taken over our academia, and humans are viewed as mere beasts, meant to be treated as pets for those who have the gnosis or knowledge. A new priest class has taken over, and the priest class is the scientific dictatorship, leading us into a brutal scenario out of 1984 and Brave New World. America is no longer a free country. As insider Edward Bernays stated in his book Propaganda, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. Is it any surprise millions of babies are murdered in abortion clinics across America? Is it any surprise when we have leaders who are ready to bomb or invade any country at the flip of a dime? The following quotes you're about to hear are from a transcript of Dr. Lawrence Dunegan and a lecture he attended. On March 20th, 1969, at a meeting of the Pittsburgh Pediatric Society, the lecturer of that gathering of pediatricians identified in tape 3 recorded in 1991 was a Dr. Richard Day, who died in 1989. And at the time, Dr. Day was the professor of pediatrics at Mount Sinai Medical School in New York. Previously, he had served as a medical director of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Dr. Dunegan was formerly a student of Dr. Day at the University of Pittsburgh. Okay, here we go. Okay. And was well acquainted with him, though not intimately. He describes Dr. Day as an insider of the order, and although Dr. Dunegan's memory was somewhat dimmed by the intervening years, He is able to provide enough details of the lecture to enable any enlightened person to discern the real purposes behind the trends of our time. And I've taken some select passages from this, from the transcript here, and I just wanted to read them off, and then I'm going to share screen with some of this stuff because I think it's very important that you get to see some of this stuff, including a letter, but that's not connected to the transcript, but it is connected. Basically, today's episode's about population control. That's why it's entitled "The Brotherhood of Death." And I'm also going to read from William Cooper's "Behold a Pale Horse," which describes the population control doctrine of the Illuminati, of these people. And, we're just going to discuss this. He was very active with population control groups, the population control movement. And population control was really the entry point into specifics following the introduction. He said population is growing too fast. Numbers of people living at one time on the planet must be limited, or we will run out of space to live. We will outgrow our food supply and will pollute the world with our waste. So they believe in this Malthusian meme that's been proven false. They want you to believe in overpopulation. Really, it has to do with these people are sickos and they want to lower the population so they can control everything. First he says that they want to permit people to have babies. He said that people won't be allowed to have babies just because they want to, or because they are careless. Most families would be limited to 2, just like they have in the China population control laws. These people are just evil. Some people would be allowed only 1. However, outstanding people might be selected and allowed to have 3. But most people would be allowed to have only 2 babies. That's because the zero population growth rate is 2.1 children per completed family. So these people are trying to genocide. They don't want you to have kids. These people are just evil. They hate life and they hate the family. These are evil, satanic, communist people. To me, up to this point, the words population control primarily connoted the idea of limiting the number of babies to be born, but this remark about what people would be allowed and then what followed made it quite clear that when you hear population control, that means more than just controlling births. It means control of every endeavor of an entire world population, a much broader meaning to that term than I had ever attached to it before hearing. As you listen and reflect back on some of the things you hear, you will begin to recognize how one aspect dovetails with other aspects in terms of controlling human endeavors. So I'm going to share the screen with our lovely audience. I got to figure out how do I do that. I know this has that ability. Um, Oh, screen share. Okay. Okay. Um. Okay, we're gonna fix this. It's gonna be quick. Okay. I think we had a technical difficulty there. Um. I don't think this is working. So, okay, I'm just gonna read it to you, folks. And okay, let's get back to our little writing here from the transcript. So they say they want to redirect the purpose of sex. They say that For population control, the next natural step then was sex. He said sex must be separated from reproduction. They want to separate sex from reproduction. They say sex is too pleasurable and the urges are too strong to expect people to give it up. So they said they would put chemicals in the food and in the water to reduce the sex drive. But they said that wasn't practical. So the strategy would not be to diminish sex, but to increase sex activity. Oh, what the cummies and the degeneracy, but in such a way that people won't be having babies. So they want people to be degenerates. They don't want people to have children. They just want people to go and be whores and whoremongers. The contraception universally available to all. The first consideration here was contraception. Contraception would be very strongly encouraged, and it would be connected closely in people's minds with sex. They would automatically think contraception when they were thinking or preparing for sex, and contraception would be universally available. Contraceptives would be displayed much more prominently in drugstores, right up with the cigarettes and chewing gum. In fact, if you go into 7-Eleven, it's exactly like that here in America. Out in the open rather than hidden under the. This was back in, I can't remember. This was like 70s. This guy in 60s. When he's recalling this, they were talking about this in the 60s to control the population. This kind of openness was a way of suggesting that contraceptions are just as much part of life as any other item sold in the store. Contraceptives would be advertised and also dispensed in the schools in association with sex education. So these sickos, these perverts, try to infiltrate the school system. Um, Sex education is a tool of world government. They said sex education was okay. Sex education was to get kids interested early, making the connection between sex and the need for contraception early in their lives, even before they became very active. At this point, I was recalling some of my teachers, particularly in high school, and found it totally unbelievable to think of them agreeing, much less participating in and distributing of contraceptives to students. But that only reflected my lack of understanding of how these people operate. This was this was okay. 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 Um, and distributing of contraceptives to students. Okay. So he says, I just lost myself, but at the point I was recalling some of my teachers. Okay. But that only reflected my understanding how these things operate. This was before the school-based clinic programs, and I know what he's talking about, got started. Many cities in the United States by this time have already set up school-based clinics, which are primarily contraception, birth control, population control clinics. The idea then is that the connection between sex and contraception introduced and reintroduced in school would carry over into marriage. Indeed, if young people, when they mature, decide to get married, marriage itself would be diminished in importance. He indicated some recognition that most people probably would want to be married, but this certainly would not be any longer considered necessary for sexual activity. This is just sad. They're just attacking everything that's good and everything that's, clean and everything that's beautiful. It pisses me off with what these people are doing. They said they want to use tax-funded abortion as population control. Now, back in 1969, 4 years before Roe versus Wade, he said abortion will no longer be a crime. This is before Roe versus Wade, before Ronald Reagan, supposed conservative, so-called right winger, supported abortion, legalized abortion. Guy wasn't a right winger; he was a globalist. But anyway, abortion will be accepted as normal, and that's how they view it now. You see these whores and witches, pro-choice, these degenerates out on the street, promoting abortion, promoting the murder of children, killing children for Moloch. These sick bastards, these devils. Contraceptives would be made available by tax money so that nobody would have to do without contraceptives. He talks about tax-funded abortion. So this will help overcome opposition to abortion. Before long, only a few diehards will still refuse to see abortion as acceptable. And I'm one of those diehards, believe me. I hope you are too. And they say they want to encourage homosexuality. People will be given permission to be homosexual. That's the way it was stated. They won't have to hide it. Well, they're out in the open now. They're marching and their little floats and all kinds of sick stuff. In addition, elderly people will be encouraged to have active sex lives in the very old ages, just as long as they can. Everyone will be given permission to have sex, to enjoy however they want. Anything goes. This is the way it was put. In addition, I remember thinking, how arrogant for this individual or whoever he represents to feel they can give or withhold permission for people um, to do things. But that was the terminology that was used. In this regard, clothing was mentioned. They started to say that they were going to promote, provocative clothing. They were planning this. Um, you know, they were going to start selling mini skirts, very, very high and revealing. He said it is not just the amount of skin that is exposed that makes clothing sexually seductive, but other more subtle things are often suggestive. Things like movement and the cut of clothing and the kind of fabric, the positioning of accessories on the clothing. If a woman has an attractive body, why would she not show it? And I kind of agree there. But at the same time, it's for married couples. You know, marriage is between one man and one woman, and that's what sex is for. It's for um, you know, you see nice lady, and you get to know each other, and you get married, and you have beautiful children. And but of course, they wanted to do it to increase premarital sexual promiscuity. There was no detail on what was meant by provocative clothing, but since that time, if you watch the change in clothing styles, and I've seen it, blue jeans are cut in a way that they're more tight fitting in the crotch. Yep. They form wrinkles. Wrinkles are essentially arrows, lines which direct one's vision to certain anatomic areas. This was around the time the burn your bra activity, which is this weird feminist thing. He indicated that a lot of women should not go without a bra. They need a bra to be attractive. So instead of burning bras and burning them, bras would come back. So they social engineer this weird feminist cult, and then they decide, well, how are we going to get people to have premarital sex and to not have kids? Because like I'm all for women, looking hot and then producing children. Go marry some hot chick, dude. But I'm not for women being whores and just having sex and killing their babies. That's terrible. And it's why we have so many problems in our society today. Technology. Earlier, he said that sex and reproduction would be separated, and he's talking about cloning here. They're going to start making babies in these test tubes. Very evil people that they think they can play God like this. They said they want to diminish the family in importance, these bastards. Um, they said they would be limited in size. We are already alluded to not being allowed more than 2 children. Um, I just have to say, that's just, who are these people to tell us how many kids we can have? And who are these people that play God? These people aren't God. They're not the Heavenly Father. These people are just devils, and they're just evil. Um, you know, to think that they have this kind of authority over us, over the free peoples of humanity, and to think that that they can. Let's see. Okay, here we can share screen. There we go. So, and here he says, yeah, the families will be limited aside. We are already alluded to not being more than 2 children. Divorce would be made easier. And we see all these families ruined because of divorce. It's very upsetting. Euthanasia and the demise pill. Everybody has a right to live only so long. Well, who made you the judge? I mean, who made you God? I mean, it's ridiculous. These people are sick. You have a right only to so many steaks, so many words, and so many good pleasures in life. After you've had enough of them, you're no longer productive, working, and contributing. Then you should be ready to step aside for the next generation. Yeah, it's like that Nazi type thinking that these Illuminati people have. They're scum. Um, and they say they want to euthanize the older people. That's like something out of Soylent Green. I mean, these people are devils, man. I don't know how many times I can say it. Other things stated in the transcript describe how the elites plan to limit affordable medical care, hide natural cures to cancer, force people to be dependent on the state. They don't even want you to have your own food gardens. These people want you to be a slave, and other devious and wicked schemes. Uninformed, brainwashed leftists have often made fun of the idea that homosexuality is being used for population control. They claim it is a conspiracy theory with no proof. The following letter I'm about to show you is authentic and very real. It is known as the Jaffa Memo. Frederick S. Jaffa, born 1925 and died 1978, was a vice president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America and founder of what is known as the Guntmacher Institute. The memo, written to Bernard Berelson, head of population control, included a table that summarized many proposals from various sources regarding population control. Jaffa also consulted with other organizations, among them the National Center for Health Statistics, the National Institutes of Health, the Commission on Population Growth, and the American Future, and the Ford and Rockefeller Foundations, of course. He was posthumously awarded the Margaret Sanger Award, Planned Parenthood's highest award, in 1978. Bernard Reuben Berelson was an American behavioral scientist known for his work on communication and mass media. So the memo includes a table that summarizes many proposals from various sources regarding population control. This table contains proposals such as compulsory abortions, sterilizations, and encouraging homosexuality, getting women into the workforce. You know, and other notions that no one would imagine an organization like Planned Parenthood be associated with. I'm pretty this was taken from Wikipedia. I took part of this from Wikipedia. No one would have imagined. I would have imagined it. I'm not surprised. But, it was founded by that sicko Margaret Sanger, racist, genocidal lunatic. But, in point of fact, however, Jaffa's table was included in a report by Planned Parenthood official that worked for Jaffa that said the report was prepared in behalf of Planned Parenthood's Population Education Staff Committee as a basis for discussion of and action on the U.S. population problem by Planned Parenthood National Organization. Oh, so great. These people piss me off. Furthermore, just 2 years later, Berelson and Jaffa would work together on the 1972 Rockefeller Commission report. Many of the ideas discussed in the memorandum were incorporated into the Rockefeller report. So while it is true that Jaffa's memorandum was primarily for purposes of laying out options for discussion, it is not true that Jaffa, Berelson, or Planned Parenthood had no intention of acting on those proposals. So, in other words, it's not true that they had no intention of acting. So, they did intend to act on these. They were damn well prepared to act on these wicked proposals, even if they were options taken from other sources. The memo reveals the lengths that population control advocates, including Berelson and Jaffa, were willing to go. As you can see here, one of the things on the memo is encouraging homosexuality, encouraging women to work, putting fertility control agents in the water. So this is a real memo. So you idiot leftists who are calling, those of us who are woke, those of us who do research, those of us who have intelligence, who have real knowledge, those of us who are pro-life, who believe in God's word, those of us who are born again believers in Jesus Christ, who we know what the Father says, and we know that the Father says, it's wrong to take a life, and we know that life begins at conception, as in the Psalms. We know the truth. In fact, even science shows you that these children can feel pain, and you just want to treat these children like animals. Well, and you people want to make jokes and say that, oh, homosexuality. This guy said homosexuality is a population control method. What a conspiracy nut! Well, here's a real memo for you morons to read. Look, it says encourage increased homosexuality. This is a real population control Rockefeller Planned Parenthood memo. Encourage increased homosexuality. It's right in there. Fertility control agents in the water supply. Sounds pretty interesting, huh? Wonder what's in the water, ladies. Encourage women to work. Feminism. Rockefeller, Aaron Russo talked about that. The concept of population control can be traced back to Thomas Malthus. Malthus would promote the Malthusian catastrophe model, which stated that famine could be helpful in killing off the poor. What a sicko. In 1779, Thomas Malthus wrote, famine seems to be the most dreadful resource of nature. The power of population is so superior to the power of earth to produce subsistence for man. Oh, sanctuary, sanctuary. That premature death must, in some shape or other, visit the human race. The vices of mankind are active and able ministers of depopulation. They are the precursors of the great army of destruction, and often finish the dreadful work themselves. But should they fail in this war of extermination, sickly seasons, epidemics, pestilence, and plague advance in terrific array, and sweep off their thousands and tens of thousands. Should success be still incomplete, gigantic, inevitable famine stalks in the rear, and with one mighty blow, levels the population with the food of the world. And so in 1798, an essay on the principle of population, chapter, page 61. It should be noted that Malthus' ideas would later return years later in the form of a book called The Population Bomb by Paul Ehrlich, whose wife Anne was a member of the Club of Rome, which will be talked about more in later slides. Inspired in fact, we're not going to talk about this. Is taken from a PowerPoint I did on population control, so I will probably do that PowerPoint in a video form, and you're going to enjoy it, I'm sure, but this isn't in there, so let me just get that out of here. Inspired by Malthus was Charles Darwin. Darwin would go on to develop the theory of evolution, which chief tenet was the survival of the fittest. So yes, Darwin was a social Darwinist. I'm tired of these faggots, these idiot leftists trying to defend Charles Darwin. You idiot retarded morons who want to go out and say, oh, Darwin didn't believe in social Darwinism. No, Darwin was a racist, eugenicist, Satanist scumbag. And yes, he very well did believe in eugenics. He was a social Darwinist. I mean, the title of his book, included all that in. It's ridiculous. His cousin, Francis Galton, would develop eugenics, and eventually their ideas would merge to become social Darwinism. Galton would develop biometrics as a way to track racial traits and genetic histories, as well as decide who would be allowed to breed. His theory of evolution was not original. In fact, can be traced back to the philosopher Ibn Khaldun, who was an Arab philosopher, and he believed people came from apes, and even earlier to various pagan sources. And so I'm going to illustrate this a bit. Well, not really, but yeah, okay, let me give you just an example of these various pagan sources. Okay, the Gnostics had their own Big Bang type thing. So the concept, but that I don't know if Darwin invented that, but the Egyptians had one of their gods jacking off into the river, the Nile River, and then that was the primordial soup. A lot of these pagan religions have weird nature type worship, reincarnation, even man coming from animals. Even according to Zechariah Sitchin, I don't know how good of a source he is, or because I've heard he didn't really translate the Sumerian tablets right, but if he did, then the Sumerians kind of believed in evolution too. They believed that humans were, monkey people, and that the Anunnaki came down and shot some kind of DNA beam down at them, and the monkeys, were made into intelligent humans. It's ridiculous, but this is what Darwin was teaching. Do you guys really think that just because some man of science, goes down to some island and sees a bunch of turtles that, he's discovered a revelation? You got to be retarded to believe in Charles Darwin's theory. Although Darwin likely got his version of the theory from his grandfather Erasmus, and Erasmus was a scumbag too, and we're going to get into him. No one is born hating God. A hatred of the creator is learned. When we look at who Darwin was inspired by, we see that Darwin did not have original thought in his mind. And Erasmus was a God hater, and there's a guy, Jason Cooley, a pastor, Old Past Baptist Church, who did a bunch of videos on Darwin. They're very good. I highly suggest them. But okay, the lie of evolution created the foundations for the degeneracy we see today, and many people try to warn about the effect it would have on society. But these voices were often quickly silenced. Darwinism would bring us a world of war, sodomy, hatred, and death and pain. So, as one biographer of Charles Darwin says, there was a vein of skepticism in the Darwin family. He was a skeptical guy, like, a lot of these smart guys out on the internet, that think they're all skeptical. I'm a skeptic, I'm so smart. Um, you're not smart. The fool believeth in his heart that there is no God. You people are fools, and I'm tired of you idiots. But um, a major part of this vein was Charles' paternal grandfather, Erasmus. He was a materialist who denied the soul of man and taught that all mental states derive from the motion of particles in the brain. He discarded the Bible and Jesus and adored in the temple of nature. For him, reason was divine and progress its prophet. Sort of like these TED Talk people, you know. Um, I think it was Joe Rogan or somebody who like came out and said he tried to go to TED Talk, but it was like Scientology and that they're like really strict. And there was another guy who uh, who went down against the science dogma and they kicked him off. The guy's not even a Christian. Neither is Joe Rogan. He was just showing how TED Talk is a cult. It's science. It's like Scientology. Erasmus was a fellow of the Royal Society, the first in a line of 6 generations of Darwins to be honored. He was a member of the Darwin-Wedgwood family, which includes his grandsons Charles Darwin and Francis Galton. The Royal Society was founded by the Order of Rosicrucian, an occult society descending from the Knights Templar. Erasmus Darwin, the founder of the Lunar Society in Birmingham, England, was pushing evolution in Masonic circles across England over 100 years before his grandson. Charles claimed to come up with the process in his book, Origin of Species, after his trip to the Galapagos Islands. That's where he saw the turtles. Turtle. The Lunar Society was also known as the Lunatics. No joke. They would call themselves this, and I think it fit them very well. I agree with them. Um, Charles lied about where he came up with his ideas and work, plus left out the pagan Masonic cult roots of the esoteric mystery school philosophy of evolution, most likely so he can either solely take credit for the philosophy or as a means to sell it to the public in fear it would be rejected of its cult roots. Once evolution was created, a search for the missing link between man and ape became paramount to prove the theory. Since no such thing exists, it was time for the hoaxsters to come out and play. Darwin published his theory in 1859. In 1912, British scientist Charles Dawson made the Piltdown man discovery. Piltdown man was supposedly the skull and jawbone of a half man and half ape mutation. However, it turned out to be a hoax. Someone had taken a human skull and put it together with an ape's jawbone. It took 40 years for people to admit it was a hoax. So, think of all the dumbasses that believe in evolution now. Congratulations, morons. You've believed in a 40-year hoax. The media promoted the discovery, and it led millions of astray for evolution. Whole scientific articles and books promoted the Piltdown finds. Dawson's partner in Piltdown, an affair, was a liberal Catholic priest, Jesuit priest, mind you, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Chardin would go on to be involved in another hoax called the Peking Man discovery, and Peking Man was apparently this parasitic creature, this ape that learned to be a cannibal, and then he got enlightened from that somehow. And we're going to discover all kinds of weird stuff in the later editions of this video. That we're going to talk about DMT. We're going to talk about LSD. We're going to talk about the elites, dude, and we're going to show you, these guys believe that monkeys ate mushrooms and had started speaking British. I mean, it's ridiculous. But Chardin would go on to be involved in another hoax called the Peking Man discovery, a bunch of supposedly missing links that all went missing before anyone could examine the bones. Conveniently, 170 fossils lost. 170. Only the notes and photographs remains strongly enough. Strangely enough, I mean. Telhard's ideas were part of the planned global New Age religion. The New Age movement is heavily based on the ideas of evolution. The evolution of consciousness, all this crap. Telhard would be known as the father of the New Age. Their goals of a one world religion and one world government are all very well documented and can be researched with time and effort. Without God as the final authority, whoever holds the biggest stick becomes the final authority. Man abuses man to his own ruin. One way in which the global satanic elite control the human population is through artificial scarcity. We are told that we do not have enough resources on the planet. We are told that oil is running out, our food is running out. The truth is, the world today produces enough grain alone to provide every human being on the planet with, 3,500 calories a day. Yeah. Whew. That's enough to make most people fat. And this estimate does not even count many other commonly eaten foods: vegetables, beans, nuts, root crops, fruits, grass fed meats, and fish. In fact, if all foods are considered together, enough is available to provide at least 4.3 pounds of food per person a day. That includes 2.5 pounds of grain, beans, and nuts, about a pound of fruits and vegetables, and nearly another pound of meat, milk, and eggs. Oil is the lifeblood of the earth and is produced within the earth. It is the black blood of the planet, and the planet produces endless amounts. Oil is not a fossil fuel like the oil barons would want you to believe. Researcher and author William Engdahl wrote, Western geologists do not bother to offer hard scientific proof of fossil origins. They merely assert it as holy truth. The Russians have produced volumes of scientific papers, mostly in Russian. The dominant Western journals have no interest in publishing such a revolutionary view. Careers, entire academic professions are at stake, after all. And this is just how things work in the West. You can't publish that stuff because someone's going to lose their job. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, because we live in such a technocratic, bureaucratic, egotistical, selfish, prideful society that you can't humble themselves. Henry Kissinger said, "Control oil, you control nations. Control food, and you control the people." Peak oil is a scam designed to create artificial scarcity and jack up prices while giving the state an excuse to invade our lives and order us to sacrifice our hard earned living standards. Publicly available CFR and Club of Rome strategy manuals from 30 years ago say that a global government needs to control the world population through neo feudalism by creating artificial scarcity. Now that the social architects have deindustrialized the United States, they're going to blame our economic disintegration on lack of energy supplies. Globalization is all about consolidation. Now that the world economy has become so centralized through the globalist operations, they are going to continue to consolidate and blame it on the West's evil over consumption of fossil fuels, while at the same time blocking the development and integration of renewable clean energies. That's why they're shutting down our coal plants, just destroying our economy. They're destroying the West. They're using our military to go bully other countries, and then they're destroying us too. So it's just totally criminal. In other words, peak oil is a scam, and they're building sweatshops in India and China, while, promoting this phony environmentalism bullcrap. In other words, peak oil is a scam to create artificial scarcity and drive prices up. Meanwhile, alternative fuel technologies, which have been around for decades, are intentionally suppressed. Peak oil is a theory advanced by the elite, by the oil industry, by the very people that you would think peak oil would harm, unless it was a cover for another agenda. So, in other words, this whole peak oil theory is created by, these, it shows you these environmentalists are controlled opposition, and it shows you the elite benefit from peak oil. Okay, but anyway, which from the evidence of artificial scarcity being deliberately created, the reasons for doing so, and who benefits, it's clear that the peak oil is a myth and should be exposed for what it is. Another excuse for the globalists to seize more control over our lives and sacrifice more American sovereignty in the meantime. The following excerpts are taken from the book The Great Oil Conspiracy by Jerome R. Corsi. It's a very good book. I suggest you buy it. Authors believing hydrocarbon fuels are fossil produced have no choice but to issue public policy suggesting Americans must wean themselves off oil. The only alternatives such traditional thinkers can envision involve scaling back the US economy and or dramatically restricting our lifestyles while demanding new legislation that mandates the use of fossil fuels, including both solar and wind, whether or not the alternatives are robust or affordable. Doom and gloom is the inevitable church hymn, refrain of those who choose to believe with near religious fervor the fossil fuel theory of the origin of oil. He also says, reading book after book predicting a gloom and doom energy future, we are left with the conclusion that fossil fuel advocates are locked into the type of thinking best characterized by Thomas Malthus in his famous 1789 essay. Malthus predicted that the population would ultimately outstrip our ability to produce food, resulting in a series of crises such as war and famine, which in turn would cut back populations to more manageable levels. Malthus proposed this as a mathematical law that governed and restricted population growth. Since population growth proceeds at a geometric rate, i.e., 2, 4, 8, 16, etc., and food production proceeds at an arithmetic rate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., there was no way the success of population growth could result ultimately in disaster to those very populations which had managed to successfully grow. Malthus is famous not because his theories was right, not because he was right, but because human experience has proven him wrong. It has proven him wrong, folks. Malthus failed to anticipate adequately the human genius for adaptation, invention, and technological advancement. Populations have grown widely beyond all the limits Malthus thought possible. Yet, even today, with a world population measured in billions that Malthus never imagined possible, Malthusians will insist Malthus was right, because they're just psychopaths. Doom and gloom Malthusians continue to theorize worldwide famine is inevitable, even though if they follow the convenient logic of peak oil theorists as they continue to push back the date predicting when the world calamity will occur. Um, so know this. So knowing this, we know that resources are not scarce. Those who find answers to many problems which face the human race are often discredited, murdered, or found their very inventions being used for evil. It happened to Nikola Tesla, and in more recent decades, Dr. Paul M. Brown, who developed a patent for meltdown-free nuclear technology. Imagine a clean nuclear technology without having to worry about a meltdown. Imagine how greatly this could help humanity. Um, Dr. Brown did, and it got him killed. So I'm going to show you this. We're really going to learn some stuff here, folks. It's fast. We're going to be learning some stuff. Yep, and you see that? This is his patent. It's really amazing. This is a, you know, decay-free nuclear, energy device that was, and this guy was killed for making it. He died. They murdered this man. Um, One of the goals of the Illuminati, according to the book Conspirators' Hierarchy, the story of the Committee of 300, is to suppress all scientific development except for those deemed beneficial by the Illuminati. Especially targeted is nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. Particularly hated are the fusion experiments currently being developed, scorned, and ridiculed by the Illuminati and its jackals of the press. Development of the fusion torch would blow the Illuminati's conception of limited natural resources right out of the window. A fusion torch, properly used, could create unlimited and as yet untapped natural resources, even from the most ordinary substances. This is a true, like I don't know what they call it, the alchemist, they want to turn lead into gold. This is how they could, with this nuclear technology. Fusion torch uses are legion and would benefit mankind in a matter which as yet is not even remotely comprehended by the public. Technocracy is the chosen system that will rule the New World Order. The elites have decided the future will not be led by sovereign international nation states, but by international mega banks and mega corporations ruling over mega cities. Many of the world's largest and most powerful private companies are no longer, if they ever were, agents of their home countries. They're becoming stateless superpowers in their own right. Coleman and Conspirator's Hierarchy writes, the fourth goal of the elite is to establish the ability to control of each and every person through means of mind control and what Zbigniew Brzezinski called technotronics. And we see it with these leftists, or they're all brainwashed. And through these EMF waves, they got you got people everywhere that have been for trying to fight against it. Targeted individuals, which would but the Technotronics would create human-like robots and a system of terror which would make Felix Derensky's Red Terror look like children at play. Daryl Hamamoto, PhD, describes how the mind control program has been tested in the universities. In an interview with the Alex Jones Show, he described how students were being weaponized against anti-establishment professors. Students are being hit with EMF waves and manipulated by social media. He described the social contagion experiment where Facebook intentionally tried to manipulate emotions by pushing negative posts in the news feeds as part of a massive psyop to increase negativity. The power elite hope to have brought America into a post-industrial world. John Coleman writes in Conspirator's Hierarchy that the fifth goal of the elite is to bring about the end of all industrialization and to end the production of nuclear-generated electric power in what they call the post-industrial zero-growth society. Expected are the computer and service industries, and this is a book, I think written in the 90s. Um, so this was right when NAFTA and all this was beginning. U.S. industries that remain will be exported to countries such as Mexico, where abundant slave labor is available. And we saw in 1993 this has become a fact through the passage of the North American Free Trade Agreement, known as NAFTA. Unemployables in the U.S. in the wake of industrial destruction will either become opium, heroin, and/or cocaine addicts, which is what we're seeing now with this opium epidemic, and the trailer parks, people just dying of opium, the blacks getting killed by cocaine. They get the white guys with the opium, and they get the black guys with the crack. Or become statistics in the elimination of the excess population process we know of today as Global 2000. Global 2000, folks, look it up. The opioid crisis, and we're going to read about Global 2000, but I highly suggest you look it up. The opioid crisis today is at an all-time high, especially with U.S. intel agents flying drugs into the country. Using their armies of controlled color revolution swarming globalist progressive demo-liberal activists, the elite are able to sell their globalist post-industrial technocracy as grassroots. This became especially obvious during the Occupy protests, who were heavily financed by George Soros. They were not grassroots. They began to support the Buffett tax rule, which was also supported by the Obama administration, which was owned by Wall Street. The protesters also supported the Tobin tax, which demands the creation of a one world government and is a tax on all financial transactions. Again, this will simply be passed on to consumers by large corporations. It will not touch Wall Street. The Tobin tax will only hurt poor and middle class and will do nothing to rein in the multinationals. The concept of a post-industrial civilization has been heavily promoted by Club of Rome with the anti-economic growth globalist organization. The Malthusian Agenda was resurrected in the form of a 1991 book called The First Global Revolution, which reads, in searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. But in designating them as the enemy, we fell into the trap of mistaking symptoms for causes. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is human intervention. These people hate humanity, folks. It is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they should be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. Their goal is to implement a smart grid, a wireless grid allowing them to have full spectrum surveillance and control capabilities of major appliances. The development and implementation of smart grid technology in the U.S., reinventing the electrical grid with Wi-Fi, Jared Kushner 6G, 5G, whatever, and enable digital power meters is proceeding at breakneck speed. Although the smart grid is the result of years of government planning, the recent kickoff was made possible through massive green grants that were quietly included in President Obama's economic stimulus package starting in 2009. These lucrative grants have drawn in a host of corporate players from utility companies, global companies like IBM, GE, Siemens are putting their full effort behind the build out that will consolidate all of America into a single integrated communication enabled electric delivery and monitoring system, collectively called the smart grid. America's financial power center has shifted from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. We need to ask ourselves, what are the tech industry elites' politics? This question is important because we all know in America money equals power. Um, and they have like a very kind of weird type of globalist agenda. Um, they want a highly educated elite that can utilize science and technology to create a utopia. History teaches us Lenin's system was a dismal failure. Instead of super intelligent technocrats, it produced rule by gangsters, thugs, and brainless bureaucrats. Also led to needless deaths of untold millions of people. So we need to really be careful with these Silicon Valley people. We don't know what they're giving us. Okay. So Silicon Valley has a lot similar to Lenin's vision. John Perkins was a former economic hitman. He describes how the globalists keep third world countries in debt. The economic hitmen would funnel money from the World Bank, USAID, and other foreign aid organizations into the pockets of global corporations and the few generational Illuminati families who control the world's resources. Economic hitmen would give huge loans to these countries to put them in debt and in turn privatize the country's resources, putting them into the hands of American oligarchs. They bribe the leaders into selling out their own nation's economic independence and national sovereignty. If the country refuses, they may have a nice color revolution or a nice visit from friendly moderate rebels. Remember Syria, anyone? Remember when Obama, that scumbag, mass murdering warmonger, sent terrorists into Syria? Remember Libya? But anyway, which Perkins refers to as the jackals, those are the moderate rebels, the jackals. Perkins exploits as an economic hitman, or talked about in his book entitled Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Alleged former MI6 agent John Coleman talks about in his book, Conspirators' Hierarchy, how environmentalists established and supported by the Club of Rome have been called upon to wage war on nuclear energy. If third world countries had nuclear energy, they would become independent of the Anglo-American globalist oligarchy. Coleman writes, nuclear generated electricity is the key to bringing third world countries out of their backward state. The elite want these countries to remain backward. The globalists would rather keep those countries in a state of destitute and turmoil and bring their people into the West to create a clash of civilizations when we have the ability to live in peace. Imperialism and globalism are creating the problems backed up by the philosophy of racist Darwinism. The global elite want to keep the third world in poverty as part of their globalization process. John Coleman writes, less foreign aid means less control of a country's natural resources by the IMF. It was this idea of developing nations taking charge of their destiny that was an anathema to the Club of Rome. We have seen in opposition to nuclear power in the United States successfully used to block industrial development in conformity with the club's post-industrial zero growth plans. Coleman went on to write, dependence on foreign aid, U.S. foreign aid, actually keeps foreign countries in servitude to the Council of Foreign Relations. The people of the recipient countries receive very little of the money, as it usually ends up in the pockets of government leaders who allow the raw material assets of the country to be savagely stripped by the IMF. Nations who are deliberately kept in debt by the globalists to further the destabilization process of the world. Whenever a leader tries to take a stand against the globalist financial structure, examples, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, etc., find their countries bombed by the US military or end up being invaded by foreign mercenaries operating under some sort of fake rebellion. However, What must be talked about most of all is the high Kissinger depopulation plan by the elite to depopulate the third world. And it has often resulted in the use of warfare as a means of depopulation. There's a book called The Dirty War on Syria by it's by Tim Anderson. It's called The Dirty War on Syria. You can get it at globalresearch.ca. You can get it on Amazon. I highly suggest you buy this book too. I really suggest it. And it shows you, the illegal stuff done against Syria. And I'm not reading from that book specifically, but it shows you the color revolution, the mercenaries, all of that, and how they've been destroying Syria. There's a plot against Syria, that against Syria. Even right now, I just heard Israel's going to fund more Free Syrian rebels, and it's just there's a whole globalist, government attacking Syria. But um, anyway, the U.S. State Department's Office of Population Affairs, established by Henry Kissinger, this group drafted the Carter's Global 2000 document, which calls for, like I said, we're going to talk about 2000, Global 2000, which calls for global population reduction, and the same apparatus is conducting the civil war in El Salvador as a conscious depopulation project. Thomas Ferguson, the Latin American case officer for the State Department's Office of Population Affairs, OPA, made the following shocking statement, very demonic. He also says GD a lot, and I didn't feel like reading that, but so I didn't put those parts in. I just put the important parts. There is a single theme behind all our work. We must reduce population levels. Either governments do it our way through nice, clean methods, or they will get, and this is in Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper. That's actually why I had this book out, but I forgot I put it on here. So I guess I don't need to have Behold a Pale Horse out. But either governments do it our way through nice, clean methods, or they will get the kind of mess that we have in El Salvador and Iran or in Beirut. This is in the 80s, where all these wars were going on. And turmoil. Population is a political problem. Once population is out of control, it requires authoritarian government, even fascism, to reduce it. The professionals, said Ferguson, aren't interested in lowering population for humanitarian reason. That sounds nice. We look at resources and environmental constraints. We look at our strategic needs and we say that this country must lower its population or else we will have trouble. So steps are taken. El Salvador is an example where our failure to lower population by simple means, has created the crisis for a national created the base for a national security crisis. The government of El Salvador failed to use our programs to lower the population. Now they get a civil war because of it. There will be dislocations and food shortages. He says that civil wars are somewhat drawn out ways to reduce population. So, in other words, the Illuminati is creating civil wars. These scumbags. The OPA official added the quickest way, and you could look this up. This is a guy admitting it, who was working for it. The quickest way to reduce populations through famine, like in Africa, or through disease like Black Death. Ferguson said if you do not let them establish a population control program, abortion, sterilization, birth control, then you'll have an El Salvador or an Iran. And God bless Uganda for standing against this, this population control program and degeneracy. Or worse, a Cambodia. So, the CIA basically backed Pol Pot to murder all those innocent people in Cambodia. And this Ferguson guy is just so wicked. He blasphemes God so many in some of the quotes. And so I didn't post those. He says, Ferguson complained that civil war in El Salvador did not kill enough people, and he said that the death squads needed to kill more young, fertile females. So girls aged 14 to 24. Those are generally women that, have a lot of babies in Latin American countries. He wanted the death squads to target, young women, young mothers, fertile young ladies. He wanted to kill them. These guys are behind this abortion stuff. They're killing innocent men, women, and children. They're not just killing soldiers out there. They're killing innocent families, young families. So you wonder, well, why are they doing that here? Why are they killing young fertile females? Why are they doing all this stuff? They're evil. To reduce population quickly, Ferguson said, you have to pull all the males into fighting, in other words, draft them all into combat, and kill significant numbers of fertile childbearing females. What did they do? Where's the humanity in these people, man? Killing, it's sick. Pisses me off. It's upsetting. Some of my sources. So, part two, which will be coming up soon, will be about transhumanism and the globalist agenda and that. And we're going to be talking about the ethics of science and a lot of these profound questions. I hope you liked it, and that will be part two of this whole little study here. And I hope that this benefited everyone. So this was humanity versus the New World Order, and we hope that people have learned from this video.